Ezinne was a star in her school, known for her intelligence and unflinching confidence. At Bright Minds Academy in Lagos, she often answered questions others wouldn't dare, argued her points boldly in debates, and earned top marks. But not everyone admired her. Teo, Bimp, and Sola, the school's most popular students, saw her as a threat. "She thinks she knows it all," Bimp sneered one day during lunch. "Maybe she should mind her business for once." The group decided they'd had enough of Ezinne's confidence. A plan began to form, a way to cut her down to size during the upcoming school assembly. They whispered and laughed, imagining the embarrassment they would cause her. Ezinne, oblivious to the brewing storm, focused on preparing for the assembly. Her presentation on leadership and responsibility was something she believed in deeply. "If we can't stand for others, we fail as leaders," she practiced in front of her mirror, holding her grandmother's scarf, a family heirloom, for inspiration. Little did she know, her words would soon be twisted against her. The morning of the assembly arrived, and the students gathered in the vast hall. As Ezinne stepped up to the podium, she felt a slight tremble in her legs. She smiled through the nerves, unaware that this moment would change everything. Ezinne took a deep breath as she stepped up to the podium. The entire assembly hall quieted, awaiting her words. She smiled confidently and began her speech about leadership, emphasizing the importance of standing up for what's right. But as she spoke, she noticed Teo, Bimp, and Sola whispering in the back row. A sense of unease washed over her, but she pushed through. Suddenly, in the middle of her speech, Bimp stood up and shouted, "Look at Miss Perfect, the teacher's pet." Laughter erupted across the room. Ezinne froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Teo joined in. "She probably thinks she's the only one who knows what leadership is." The mockery spread like wildfire. Students who had once respected her now laughed along. Sola added, "Maybe she should learn to mind her own business." The laughter grew louder. Ezinne's face flushed with embarrassment. Her speech was lost in the sea of laughter. Her hands trembled as she clutched her grandmother's scarf tighter. Desperate to escape, she bolted from the stage, her heart shattered. The laughter followed her as she fled the hall. Alone in the hallway, tears blurred her vision, but the sting of their cruelty wasn't the worst part. It was the feeling of betrayal. Ezinne ran home that afternoon, ignoring the calls of her classmates and the whispers that followed her down the street. She slammed the door to her room and collapsed onto her bed, still holding her grandmother's scarf. The mocking voices echoed in her mind, but she tried to focus on the one thing that always gave her peace, the stories her grandmother told her about their ancestors. Her grandmother, a wise woman of the Igbo people, had always spoken of the spirits who watched over their family. "You have the strength of our ancestors within you," she would say, her voice full of pride. "Whenever life is tough, remember they are with you, guiding you." Ezinne closed her eyes and imagined her grandmother's face, full of wisdom and love. It was comforting to think that her grandmother's spirit was still with her, even after her passing. But today, she felt more lost than ever. She wanted to believe in those stories, to find strength in her ancestors, but how could they help her now? A soft voice broke through her thoughts. "Ezinne," she froze. Had she heard that? It wasn't her imagination. The voice came again, clearer this time. Teo, Bimp, and Sola gathered in their usual hangout spot at school, laughing and high-fiving each other. "Did you see her face when we called her out?" Bimp said, still grinning. "She was ready to cry right there. I swear, she thought she could control us with that speech," Teo added. "She should know better than to challenge the popular crowd." Sola smirked. "She's just too full of herself. Who does she think she is, acting like she's better than everyone?" They all laughed together, their victory over Ezinne feeling like a triumph. But as the day wore on, something began to feel off. The air in their hangout spot grew unevenly cold, and shadows seemed to stretch longer than they should. Theo looked around uneasily. Is it just me, or does this place feel weird? I don't know, Sola muttered, glancing over her shoulder. Maybe we've gone too far this time. Bimp shook her head. We've done worse. She deserved it. But even she couldn't shake the strange feeling in the pit of her stomach. The market outside seemed noisier than usual, yet somehow quieter at the same time. That night, they all went to bed uneasily, unsure of what was about to happen next. When the lights of their rooms faded, the three bullies drifted into sleep. But this wasn't the peaceful sleep they were used to. Instead, they found themselves waking in an unfamiliar place, a vibrant, bustling marketplace under a moonlit sky. The streets were crowded, the air filled with the sounds of haggling, laughter, and music. Stalls overflowed with goods, fruits, beads, fabrics, and colorful trinkets. The vibrant colors and smells were unlike anything they'd ever experienced. But something felt wrong. I don't like this, Bimp whispered, clutching her arms. Where are we? I don't know, Theo muttered, looking around nervously. This doesn't feel like a dream. I think we're in Lagos, Sola said, her voice shaking. But it's not the Lagos we know. This place, it feels different. They stumbled through the market, their footsteps echoing loudly in the quiet streets. In the distance, they could see a large building, a grand courtroom, illuminated by a strange light. Compelled by an unseen force, they began to walk toward it. They couldn't explain why, but they had to go. The closer they got, the more the air thickened with a strange energy. A chill ran down their spines as they crossed the threshold into the courtroom. As the bullies stepped into the grand courtroom, they were struck by its magnificence. The chamber's high ceilings glimmered with golden patterns, and the air hummed with energy. The ancestral spirits sat in a semicircle, their robes representing Nigeria's ethnic diversity. The Igbo elder wore a flowing white attire with coral beads, while the Yoruba representative was adorned in a deep blue border and a matching fila. The Hausa elder wore a regal kaftan with an embroidered cap. At the center of the tribunal sat Ezinne's grandmother, her presence commanding. She looked younger and more vibrant than Ezinne remembered, yet her wisdom radiated unmistakably. Do you know why you are here? Her voice boomed. The bullies exchanged nervous glances. This is some kind of dream, Theo muttered, trying to sound brave. This is no dream, the grandmother countered. You are here to answer for your actions. She gestured, and the walls of the courtroom began to shimmer, revealing scenes of Ezinne's humiliation. The trio's laughter faded as they watched the pain they caused unfold before them. Ezinne's grandmother stepped forward. You have been summoned here for your cruelty. Your words and actions inflicted pain on a young soul. Do you deny this? Theo, ever the bold one, tried to speak up. We were just joking. She's too sensitive. Silence, boomed the Yoruba elder. The ground beneath Theo shook slightly, silencing him. The Hausa elder spoke, his voice measured and stern. You laughed at her pain. You sought to diminish her spirit. Is that the way of leaders? Bim folded her arms, trying to appear unfazed, but the Igbo elder turned to her. You mocked her intelligence because you envied her strength. It is time to face the truth. The courtroom darkened as each elder waved their hand, summoning visions of the trio's actions. They saw themselves gossiping, whispering rumors, and laughing as Ezinne fled the stage. The laughter that once seemed harmless now felt cruel and haunting. Do you still claim innocence? The grandmother asked. Before they could answer, the room shimmered again, and the trio found themselves in Ezinne's shoes. They were standing at the podium, facing the entire assembly. Whispers filled the air, growing louder and louder until they turned into mocking laughter. This is what she felt, said the Yoruba elder. Theo, now in Ezinne's place, tried to speak, but his words were drowned out by the noise. He felt his confidence crumble as the laughter grew louder, harsher, until it was unbearable. "Stop it," he yelled, but the scene continued. Bimp was next, relieving the isolation Ezinne felt as her classmates ignored her in the hallways. Every glance was filled with judgment, and the loneliness was suffocating. Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered, "I didn't know it felt like this." Finally, Sola experienced the pain of being the subject of cruel jokes. He watched as others pointed and laughed, their words cutting deeper than he ever thought possible. I didn't mean for it to go this far," he muttered. The vision faded, and the trio found themselves back in the courtroom. The elders looked at them with piercing eyes. "What you saw was only a glimpse of the harm you caused," the Igbo elder said. Ezinne's grandmother stepped forward. "The pain you inflicted lingers, even now. But the ancestors are merciful. You have a chance to make things right." "How?" Teo asked, his bravado gone. "You must confront your insecurities and take responsibility for your actions," the Hausa elder replied. "It is not enough to apologize. You must prove that you have learned." The Yoruba elder added, "We will be watching. If you fail, the weight of your guilt will follow you for the rest of your days." The trio nodded, their earlier confidence replaced with fear and humility. The next morning, Teo, Bimp, and Sola woke up in their respective beds, drenched in sweat. Each of them felt the weight of what they had experienced. The visions, the tribunal, the ancestors, they were too vivid to dismiss as a dream. Teo stared at the ceiling, his heart pounding. He replayed the scene of himself at the podium, feeling Ezinne's pain. "I can't let this go," he whispered to himself. Bimp sat on the edge of her bed, clutching her knees. The loneliness she felt in the vision haunted her. She didn't deserve that, she admitted. Sola, usually stoic, found himself tearing up as he recalled the mocking laughter directed at him. "We need to fix this," he thought, determination building in his chest. At school that day, the trio avoided each other, each lost in their thoughts. But they all knew what they needed to do. Redemption would not come easy, but it was the only way forward.